There's something about betrayal that cuts deeper than any wound. When you give someone your heart, you expect them to protect it, not to hand it over to someone else behind your back. That's exactly what happened to me. I thought my life was set, engaged to a man I loved, planning our future together, when suddenly, everything fell apart. But here's the twist. Instead of confronting him or falling into pieces, I did something most people wouldn't expect. I left. No screaming, no accusations. I just walked away, leaving him with nothing but silence, and a tub of vanilla ice cream. Sounds crazy, right? But trust me, that's just the beginning. It wasn't easy, though. Realizing that the person you trusted most has been mocking you and belittling you behind your back feels like the ultimate betrayal. It would have been so tempting to lash out, to confront him in a whirlwind of emotion. But what I did next turned out to be the most empowering decision I've ever made. Instead of dwelling on the pain, I took back control of my life, starting with a solo trip that was meant to be our honeymoon. It was the most liberating experience I could have imagined, and honestly, it was exactly what I needed to rediscover my worth. If you've ever been hurt like this, or even if you're just struggling to find your own strength, my story might sound familiar. And let me tell you, it's not about revenge, it's about reclaiming yourself, your dignity, and your life. Curious to know how I did it? Stick around, because this journey is one for the books. I still remember those quiet evenings when I thought everything was going as planned. Dale was my safe harbor, or at least I believed he was. Until one seemingly ordinary afternoon, I stumbled upon something that would change everything. There they were, the emails, sent to Jen, his ex-girlfriend. What shocked me wasn't just the fact that he was still in contact with her, but the tone of the messages. He mocked me, made fun of who I was, and even ridiculed the scar I carried as a painful reminder of a near-fatal accident. You know that feeling of being in the wrong place at the wrong time? That's exactly how I felt. Every word hit me like a punch to the gut. He confessed, without hesitation, that he was still in love with Jen. This wasn't some harmless fondness people talk about when reminiscing about the past. It was a burning, present passion, something he nurtured while being with me. And to think, I saw myself as his partner, his confidant. I asked myself how I hadn't seen this sooner, but the truth is, when you're blinded by emotions, the obvious becomes hidden. He ridiculed me, my scars, my identity, and worst of all, he enjoyed sharing this with someone else. And the most painful part? I didn't have the strength to confront him at that moment. Part of me wanted to blow everything up, but the other part, the one that preserves pride and dignity, knew that wouldn't lead anywhere. That day was the first of many where I started rethinking who I was, what I deserved, and how self-love could no longer be ignored. But the worst was yet to come. The more I read, the more I felt my world crumble. Dale wasn't just mocking my appearance, he was openly discussing his unhappiness with me. He told Jen that he had been considering leaving me for a while, but hadn't yet gathered the courage. The emails revealed how dissatisfied he was with our relationship. He made crude remarks about our intimate life, remarks that Jen found hilarious. It was like watching someone tear down everything I thought we had built together, brick by brick. His words were like daggers, each sentence cutting deeper than the last. The man I thought I knew, the one who promised me a future together, was entertaining someone else with intimate details of our life, details that should have remained between us. And the worst part? He didn't even try to hide it in those emails. There was no regret, no hesitation. It was as if he had made peace with his feelings for Jen, and I was merely a placeholder in his life. That realization felt like a betrayal on so many levels. At that point, the decision started to take shape in my mind. I knew I had to leave, but I didn't want the drama, the confrontation. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than words. It was clear to me that Dale had already checked out emotionally. There was no need for a screaming match, no need for an argument. The only thing left for me was to figure out how to reclaim my dignity. I started making plans, quietly, carefully, because once you know the truth, there's no going back. Leaving was a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating at the same time. With the help of my friends Jake and Mike, I was able to move out quietly. They stood by me, providing not only their support but also the practical help I needed. We packed up my things while Dale was at work, and within a few hours, the apartment no longer felt like mine. It wasn't easy to walk away from a place that had so many memories, but at that point, the memories were tainted. As I left, I made sure to leave behind something that would make a statement, my engagement ring, sitting on top of a tub of vanilla ice cream. You see, the vanilla ice cream wasn't just a random choice. In one of his emails to Jen, Dale had made a snide comment about how plain I was, comparing me to vanilla. He found it amusing, but I decided to turn that insult into my own quiet victory. The ring, once a symbol of our commitment, now served as a final goodbye. I wasn't going to let him define me by his words anymore. I left it there as a reminder of how far I had come, and how much further I was willing to go without him. Driving away from that apartment, I felt a mix of emotions, sadness, anger, but most of all, a sense of relief. I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life. It wasn't easy, but sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that set us free. With Jake and Mike by my side, I knew I wasn't alone in this journey. And while I didn't know what would come next, I knew one thing for certain, I wasn't going to look back. But of course, Dale wasn't about to let me go that easily. Not long after I left, Dale began bombarding me with messages. At first, they were almost laughable. He acted completely clueless, like he didn't know why I had left. His tone was innocent, almost sweet, as if he thought he could just talk me into coming back. But I wasn't that same person anymore. I had seen the truth in those emails, and there was no going back. Ignoring him only seemed to make things worse. The texts quickly shifted from feigned confusion to thinly veiled anger. He couldn't understand why I had the nerve to leave without a word. As the days passed, his messages became more aggressive, filled with insults and accusations. He called me ungrateful, said I was overreacting, and even had the audacity to blame me for our failed relationship. Each message was like watching someone unravel. Dale was no longer the man I had once loved, he had turned into a bitter version of himself. I didn't engage with him, didn't respond, and that drove him even crazier. There was nothing left to say, I had made my choice, and I wasn't going to let his words drag me back into that toxic cycle. Eventually, I did the only thing I could to protect my peace, I blocked him. It was like cutting the final thread that still connected us. No more angry messages, no more guilt trips. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of calm. It's funny how the person who once made you feel so small loses their power the moment you decide to walk away. Blocking him wasn't just about silencing his words, it was about reclaiming my control. And from that point on, I knew my life was headed in a new direction, one where I called the shots. In the weeks that followed, I felt a transformation taking place. The anger, the hurt, it all began to fade, replaced by a quiet strength I hadn't known I possessed. Instead of falling into despair, I decided to do something bold. I took what would have been our honeymoon trip, alone. It wasn't about running away, it was about reclaiming the experience for myself. Traveling solo gave me a sense of empowerment, a reminder that I didn't need anyone to complete me. It was a celebration of independence, of moving forward on my own terms. That trip was the first step toward building a new life. When I returned, I started focusing on the things I had neglected, my passions, my friendships, and most importantly, myself. I eventually bought my own home, a place that was truly mine, where every corner reflected who I was without anyone else's influence. There's something powerful about creating your own space, a sanctuary that represents your growth. And as I settled into this new chapter, I realized that I didn't need a relationship to feel fulfilled. I stayed single, not because I was afraid of love, but because I had finally learned to love myself. My friends, like Jake and Mike, were a constant source of support throughout this journey. They reminded me that true companionship comes from those who lift you up, not tear you down. And with that realization, I found a deep sense of peace. Life didn't go as I had originally planned, but in the end, it turned out exactly as it needed to. The best part? My story was just beginning. Now that you've walked with me through this journey, ask yourself, what's holding you back from taking control of your life? Is it fear of the unknown? Worry about what others might think? Here's the thing, life is too short to stay in situations that dim your light. You deserve more. We all do. And while leaving isn't always easy, the reward on the other side of peace, strength, and self-love is worth every difficult step. Imagine where you could be if you stopped settling and started prioritizing your happiness today. So, what are you going to do about it? Are you ready to stop waiting for someone else to change your life and start doing it yourself? It's time to act. Whether that means walking away from a toxic relationship, taking a long overdue trip, or simply rediscovering who you are, don't wait for permission. Go out and claim what's yours. You've got everything it takes, but it's up to you to take the leap. If this resonates with you, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can stay connected and continue learning how to build the life you deserve. Together, we'll keep growing and pushing toward that better, stronger version of ourselves.